Hello, everyone. Welcome to another stream. We are live. I am here with Matt and Sid. You can't see them, but you can hear them.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, there we heard both of them. And yeah, it's going to be the Council of Tolkien tonight. I'm just in the process of getting the chat up and all that. I'm going to have to get another window here for the YouTube chat. Oh, that's very bright. It's a spreadsheet. Let's see. Apparently, by the way, we have very severe formatting issues on Quora right now. They're working on fixing. For anybody who's interested to know that. Also, the digests are bugged too, but they're also working on fixing that. Oh, okay, I don't need to hear myself. I just needed the chat. Hey there, Chewy and Will. How's it going, guys? Gentlemen, start your engines. Fire up the furnaces of our thank, and prepare the horde of Urukai, for we have arrived. I'm just going to go ahead and get the word out that we're live. Okay. Although Chewy and Will are already there. They don't need to be told. We'll tell everybody else. Okay. I know why it didn't pick up the Windows. Remember when we first came on and it was everything, like Matt's was half cut off and Sid was almost completely cut off? I just realized why. Because I popped out the webcams into a separate window and everything was bigger. I think it works better that way, because that way I can utilize Discord normally while not having to worry. Hey, Walter, how's it going? And Medio, how's it going? Walter, so me and you, we had a discussion about the possibility of you starting a YouTube channel. Do you mind if I talk about that very briefly? You just got a message from your housemate asking what edition of the Silmarillion you have, just as you logged on here. Fate, I feel. Well, you know, these things are meant to happen. You were meant to find that book. Okay, so yeah, Walter was talking to me just the other day about the idea that he had to start a YouTube channel, specifically a YouTube channel that reviews subcreation, which is a word that Tolkien used, that we would use the word fan fiction. And I said, you know, I'd like to see that when you do it. I'd maybe even help you out a bit. But what's really interesting is that Sid is a great writer of fan fictions, and he has several. And so I'll have to send you some of Sid's if you start this. I'm sure that would be a really, really great baseline, so you can get here's how it's done, you know. I have a fan fiction that I've been writing on and off for many, many months, and right now I haven't touched it in a bit, but it's maybe about 70% complete. You know, sometimes you just get writer's block, you know.
Tolkien did too.
Well, he was also a perfectionist and a procrastinator, and I can relate to both of those things. Hey, Gray, what's being sent to Sid? A new airship? No, Sid with an S, not Sid with a C.
When you're a perfectionist, the idea of engaging all the time to perfection can make you very weary, and then sets up the procrastination part. I can see that completely.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, Walter, I wish you the best of success with that endeavor, and like I said, if you need any like pointers for navigating like the whole landscape of YouTube, or maybe if we can collaborate on some point. But like I said, this might be the motivation I need to finally finish my story, which is it's an early Third Age story about Imrazor and Mithralas, which I'm not going to talk about it much more because I'm curious to see if anybody in the chat room right now knows who those characters are. Let's see what anybody says, right? Like, oh, I know them, or no, I have no idea, right?
I've heard their name.
Yeah. They're not related to Chica Baggins or Daddy Two-Foot. Hey, Tommy, how's it going? Tommy does chiles, greeting all of us. Yeah, so does anybody in the chat know Imrazor or Mithralas? Let's see if you guys know those characters. Oh, and Walter's writing a fan fiction about the Blue Wizards. I feel like that's that topic is ripe for fan fiction, because he didn't really write anything about them except in his letters, and even then he even said he didn't know much. You don't know those characters? Okay. Well, you'll become more familiar with them when I send you my story. I'll tell you that they're ancestors of Prince Imrahil from The Lord of the Rings. You remember he's a Númenórean. Chewie, what's up? He was not from Númenor. He was born long after the Akalabeth, but he was called the Númenórean. What was the question? Oh, I was asking if you guys knew about Mithralas and Imrazor. But, yeah. All right. So I think we should start. It's 7:30 now, and that's time to start. So we're going to go over to here, and now you can see Matt and Sid. Sid is the one nodding and smiling. Matt was the one who almost gave you the finger, and he's giving you the metal horns, kind of the metal horns, right? In honor of Ronnie James Dio, I guess. Well, I guess Ozzy Osbourne passed away recently. We can say that's in his honor, right? You're a very big fan of Alatar and Polando. Well, the cool thing about the Blue Wizards is that because they're so obscure and not really well known, is they're sort of blank slates. Walter is saying hello to Matt and Sid, just to let you guys know.
Walter.
Hi, Walter.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start. So if you guys don't know, we are here at the Council of Tolkien, and the whole idea of this is that each of us will have a half-hour segment. Well, I mean, we all speak in all the segments, but we'll be a half hour. We'll talk about a subject that I picked out, and then we'll have another section where it's going to be Sid's turn, and we'll all talk about that, and then we do Matt. And in this case, for those of you who were here last time, oh, hey, CW Train. It's your favorite stream of the month. That's wonderful to hear. Sid is going to be continuing from last time. We already started on his topic, but it's going to be something that's going to be concluded next month. You want to know where Radagast is? Ooh. That's another subject for fan fiction. What happened to Radagast? Hey, Laurel, how's it going? Laurel's in the chat, you guys. All right. I don't have my mug with me. I think Matt does. I just had ice cream out of it the other night, and I was washing it. But anyway, guys, let's get started. So I'm going to go first here. Where's my timer? There it is. I'm going to give myself 2 minutes to sort of explain what I'm going to do here, or what we're going to do here, and then we're going to set it for a half hour where we will be discussing this topic. Okay, so I wanted to talk about Tolkien reusing specific names throughout his many drafts of the Legendarium. Of course, reusing names is really not that unheard of. Characters get named after each other. For example, Denethor is the son of Ecthelion. It's obviously not the same Ecthelion from the Fall of Gondolin, because that guy died and wound up in the West, and Denethor's father was not an elf, so on and so on and so on. Aragorn is not the first Aragorn. He's the second Aragorn. There's a lot of that. There's like 3 different Hurins and 3 different Turins, and there's a lot of that. But the names that I want to speak about specifically today are Luthien and Firiel. And Firiel comes up in many different works, and so does Luthien. And it's interesting because this is something that I've talked about a little bit in my videos recently and a little bit on Quora recently, that a lot of people don't know that there's more than one Luthien. As a matter of fact, in one of my quizzes, I had said which of these characters, which of these names is only one character, not multiple ones. And a lot of people thought it was Luthien. It was actually Glorfindel. So we're going to talk about the different Luthiens, and we're going to talk about the different Firiels, and also what these names mean and how Tolkien's linguistics changed over time to fit with the definition that he required for the story. So I'm going to stop the topic there. The intro there, and I'm going to set it to a half hour. And I'm still going to be explaining, because I got to go over who these different characters are, but you guys can jump in at any point with questions or anything, and we'll discuss this. Okay, so first let's go over the 6 Luthiens real quick. There is, of course, the one Luthien we know from Beren and Luthien. Her name is Sindarin. It means daughter of flowers, or perhaps daughter of the night. The early Noldolin translation was actually enchantress, which we can see with things like her putting Morgoth to sleep, or putting the guards outside the tower that she was in to sleep. She was but in the early Legendarium, she wasn't called Luthien. She was called Tenuviel, which is nightingale, or daughter of twilight. And notice that it ends with el, Tenuviel. El, I-E-L, at the end of a name is a feminine marker. It's sort of like a daughter. But let's talk about the other Luthiens, because they were all guys. Well, one of them was not a person at all, but there was also a Luthien who was a male gnome, who was the son of Gemir. He had a banner of a yellow swallow with a blue background, and there was no meaning to his name, and we don't really know anything about him. He was just somebody that was mentioned in the Book of Lost Tales. The third Luthien was one of the Valar. He was the son of Telemachtar. Telemachtar was the son of Nessa and Tulkas. And by the way, at this point in the story, in the writing, Nessa was the daughter of Aule and Yavanna. So this male Luthien was a Vala who was like, Aule's great-grandson, so to speak. His name was Gnomish, and it meant friend or wanderer. And sometimes it was Lucian, because it would be in Quenya, it would be Lucian. The fourth Luthien is actually Elfwine, who is a male elf that brought the Red Book of Westmarch from Tol Eressëa to a land that he also called Luthien, because it was the land of friendship of elves and men. It was originally called Eressëa, but then Tolkien decided that Eressëa was going to be something separate. He started calling it Luthien for a bit, and then he called it Luthany, and then it became Albion, or England. So that changed over time. So that's actually 2 of them. There's 2 Luthiens there. There's the land of Luthien, or Luthany, and then there's Elfwine, which is the same meaning as Elendil, friend of the elves, which is what Luthien meant at that point. And then the final Luthien is from the Book of Lost Tales. There was a man named Ariel, and there was an old elf named Nelmir, and she ate that sort of bread that made her young again, and they got married, and they had a son named Luthien. And that, in this case, the name is also translated into Old English as Hendwine, which means very close friend. So before we get even crazier, let's get your thoughts on this, guys. I want to hear from Matt and Sid here. Sid, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in on a personal note about why I understand what something of what Tolkien was doing. We know that he was enormously absorbed by, affected by languages. He actually contributed to the Oxford English Dictionary, that was early on, that not many people know. And then he invented languages and kept changing them. So there's some unconscious creative call, both about languages and about name. And then you, just for a second, you mentioned an Ariel, and this is interesting to me because from the time I read
Oh,
The
that
Tempest
was
in high school,
not Arion. That was
they said Ariel.
Ariel. Ariel.
That's what I'm talking, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I was enormously drawn to the character Ariel in The Tempest by Shakespeare in high school. The name has had profound meaning for my entire life. The character in Shakespeare is male, yet to me, Ariel ending in EL in English is a female name. So I
It's
have an experience very similar to Tolkien.
it's a male name in Hebrew, though, right? Ariel.
I don't. I'll check that later.
Actually, I think it's gender neutral in Hebrew.
Yeah.
I think it goes either way.
Well, Ari is a male name. I don't know about Ariel. I'll check.
Well, this is
check.
Ariel with an E, but Ariel, I think as a Hebrew name, might be both male and female.
Can I finish my thought?
Yeah, so of course, go ahead.
So what I'm saying is, I understand becoming enchanted by a name, and I understand having that name shift gender, because I personally had both those experiences, and I really think Ariel for me is a name that activates my creativity. And so I'm wondering if something like that wasn't going on with Tolkien for Luthien. Look at how Luthien inspires. You know, her dance inspires so much love and so much enchantment. And remember that enchantment is linked to language and magic in Tolkien. So it kind of all ties together, and I'm saying this intentionally, in incomprehensible ways. It's the very heart mind of Tolkien that remains a mystery, but we can really enjoy it with him.
I want Matt's thoughts, but I also wanted to comment one thing. You mentioned enchantment, and that does go back to Tenuviel, meaning enchantress. Also, I looked up Ariel as a Hebrew name. It is gender neutral, and it means God's lion, which is interesting, just in case anybody was wondering.
Right. Ari is lion, so anytime you get an EL in Hebrew, it means
it's
God.
Yeah, exactly.
And many names do.
Matt, any because it's interesting though that he had this whole Beren and Luthien is one of the earliest stories he wrote, but he never called her Luthien until later. He was using Luthien for male characters. He was calling her Tenuviel, but he must have. I think personally, he really loved the name, and he wanted it to exist on a character that was very important. And I think that's where that
and he identified himself as Beren at some point in life. So
yeah, I mean it's on his grave. Yeah, it's on his grave. Matt, I want your thoughts here.
Yeah, it began a lot earlier than that. So once he identified himself as Beren, his well, to use the Jungian term, the embodiment of his feminine soul, his wife, would also be his creative mentor. And so Luthien had to become female. Mm-hmm. Sorry to take so long. Let's hear.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, no, I want to hear Matt's thoughts here.
That's a good thought. So I would just say that it's my understanding that part of the way that Tolkien writes his stories and gets enamored with some of the ways that he comes to these ideas and then uses them is from the perspective of the character. She gets her name Tenuviel because that's what Beren calls her after peering at her in the glen where she's dancing from the cover of the woods. He doesn't have her name. He doesn't know what her name is. But he names her that in his own mind, and he's singing to himself and thinking about her after he sees her first as that's her name. So that becomes her name through Baron's eyes. And Tolkien honors that kind of memory as giving her a second name. Her name is Luthien, and then she becomes Luthien Tinuviel because of Baron's seeing of her at that moment. And he combines the two, a name given by her parents and a name given by Baron, her future lover and husband and mate in production of their one child, Dior. And it just seems to me that that's a very fine, artistic, beautiful way to write names. I mean, almost like Tolkien is happy with the character's infusion of names because he gets to make up another name. He gets to make up another name that has, a Sindarin or a Quenya translation to it that he gets to figure out and put in there, especially when he finds one he likes phonetically, and he and this particular one that really catches his fancy. So it to me, the names are a little bit different than John in one sense. To me, it's a little bit of a window into Tolkien's, I don't know, artistic heart, if you want to call it that.
You're 100% right about that last part, especially because people think about Tolkien and they think, well, he's going to set the language and then he's going to be sort of bound into that and it's not going to change. But he would change these things all the time because it was not even, the story, the Lay of Leithian, becomes Beren and Luthien, because he loved that name. He loved it. He gave it to so many different characters. But then he realized, I think, this is such a great name. I love the way it sounds in my mouth. It's fair. And he always said that he wanted names that sounded good in his mind, that just sounded right for the character or the situation. He wasn't going to come up with a name that didn't. Unless it was an orc, then he wants it to sound ugly as heck. But
I had another thought because in our work up to the show tonight, I made a comment, and you guys, I think you both agreed with it, kind of, and that is that, Tolkien's a perfectionist and a procrastinator at the same time. How do those two things work together? Well, I don't think that I'm a perfectionist necessarily, unless there's some things, but in some parts of my life personally, I'm such a perfectionist that I feel a huge amount of procrastination toward doing that thing because it requires so much energy and focus and time to be the perfectionist that I know I'm going to have to be to do this particular project, that all I want to do is sleep and eat a bag of bonbons. It just makes me just want to, not engage with it right away. And I think that this language thing is fun for him, but it also makes him feel in some ways as an author tired and maybe not lethargic, but it puts a little bit of dread into him in the procrastination that's going to be required to revise, to make perfect, to do all the things that he's just done to himself by his sheer acts of creativity, and he knows that, and I think we see that in some of this that we're going over today.
So let's talk. Sorry. I wanted to move on to the next part, but I'll give Sid a quick bit to talk here.
I think I found an example that absolutely verifies what Matt is saying about Tolkien, because it shows one time he snuck around that. I think we can agree he was much less perfectionistic when he was just telling a story to his children that he didn't even know would become a book. And so we have The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And the names of all but one of Thorin and Company's dwarves were stolen from one of the Eddas, one of the ancient literary manuscripts. Yep. And he just took, 12 of the 13 names he needed, including Thorin, everybody but Balin, straight from there. But he loved the book. So I think he did a quick grab. I'm not going to think up 13 dwarvish names. I love those 12 dwarves. I'll add one more. And yet he still had the love connection, not to each individual name. They were lovingly silly. Balin, Dwalin, Ori, Nori, Oin, Gloin,
By for Bo for Bomber.
Philly and Killy most of all.
Yeah,
and those are, of course, the youngest ones. And so he used them in wonderful ways, but he grabbed them from a source that he loved, but he could do it quickly because they were already.
Yeah, he's trying to put his children to bed, and it's they want to hear something. Now, okay, so I think we're just in agreement that he just really loved the name Luthien, and he was using it everywhere, but then decided at one point he has to use it for something really important. It can't just be these minor characters that might not get fleshed out. It has to be somebody that really matters because he loved the name that much. The other name that he loved incredibly. Oh man, Walter, don't get me started on Beowulf, because I'll go off on that with Beorn and Beowulf and Turin and all that stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about that at some point. But yes, absolutely, because it's the same meaning as Beowulf. But anyway, let's talk about Firiel. Firiel is the other name that winds up in so many different places. Now, the first one is actually... Oh, and by the way, just a reply to something that Matt said, because you talked about how, Tunuviel was a name that was given to her, and that became, like Baron's name. We see that with Galadriel as well, because Galadriel already had two names, and then Celeborn came along and said, no, you're Galadriel. And that's what we all know her as, Okay, so first there was Miriel. Miriel is Finwë's first wife, Feanor's mother. And she died of exhaustion, kind of willingly died. And this is really interesting from the linguistic standpoint. She dies, and then when she comes back, they start calling her Firiel. And I want to make a joke here, too, because we all know how much Feanor loved it when they changed his mother's name. He just loved that. No, but anyway... they started calling her Firiel. And the reason that they started calling her Firiel is because they did not have a word for death. Men were not a thing yet. So as far as they know, there's no death. So then they wanted to call her She That Died, but they didn't have that as a word. They hadn't invented a word for death yet. So they called her Firiel, which means she that sighed, because she took this final breath, this big final, and that's where she gets her name from. That's Feanor's mother. And I'm going to come back to the sigh and the breath in a bit. But the second Firiel was a princess of Gondor, and she married a guy from the north named Arvedui. She was an Arian's heir. He was Isildur's heir. And this is the line that brings the two together and leads down to Aragorn. Very important character. You could read about her in the appendix. The name in this case means mortal woman, which, if you think about it, that's pretty similar to She That Died, right? Because mortals die. Then Sam had a granddaughter named Firiel. Eleanor's daughter was Firiel. Then there was a Firiel in The Lost Road, which was a science fiction story that Tolkien was writing, and it became, over time, the earliest Numenor myth. So in this case, Elendil, you guys know Elendil, he had a son in this version of the story named Herendil, and they heard Firiel singing this mournful tune in a language they called Erasean. It's really just Quenya. And she sings basically the Ainu Lindala, the creation myth. She's singing about Iluvatar and how the world was creating. And Elendil's son, Herendil, becomes upset because everybody in Numenor sings about Melko and how he's going to bring them the sun. And because it's sort of showing, sort of the fall of Numenor's faith and everything. I said it's the very earliest myth of Numenor. And it's interesting because that Elendil would have a son that wasn't one of the faithful. And then we have the poem Firiel. He wrote a poem called Firiel. It was published in a place called The Chronicles of the Convents of the Sacred Heart. And then much, much later, he revised it. He made it better. He called it The Last Ship, and it's in the adventures of Tom Bombadil. And this is about a mortal woman who sees a boat, the last ship to sail to the west, go by. And there's 3 elvish kings, or at least what she presumes to be 3 elvish kings. They think she's beautiful. They're like, hey, come on, Toots, come on the boat with us. And she tries to go. She gets stuck in the mud. and she can't go, and she realizes that she can't sail to the west because she's mortal. Once again, she that dies or will die. And I always thought the three elves might have been Círdan, Celeborn, and Thranduil. It's just conjecture, really. It's in the realm of surmise. But anyway, let's talk about this. Firiel, first of all. The language changed, obviously, from she that sighs to mortal woman. But I've already made that connection of the sigh being the last breath and that mortals die. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I'll just use a parallel from a more recent language. To become full of powerful living meaning is to inspire, which means to breathe in.
Mm-hmm.
But when we breathe out, we expire, which is a euphemism for death. So we have the same in Latin as well as Tolkien's languages.
Yep. Matt, thoughts?
Absolutely. I don't know if I can follow that. That's
Yeah, that's pretty great, right?
Wait, let me have 5 seconds there.
Well, you know what? I'll give you five. I'll give you a moment because I'm going to answer a question from chat. Yeah. If there are any other modern English names in the Legendarium besides Sam and Mary and Tom. Yeah, there's Bill. There's a bunch of Bills. There's Bill the Pony. There's Bill Fernie. There's Bill Huggins, the troll. There was William and Bird as well. There are plenty of those. You see that in the Breeland and Shire area. Plenty of those kind of names, you know.
John, can you restate the
and Laurel? I'll fix that. Well, just your thoughts on the different Firiels and the connection between she that sighed, the meaning for Firiel as in Miriel Therinda. I'll say it in the way that doesn't annoy Feanor. I'm raising your volume, Sid, because Laurel has asked me to do that. There we go. And mortal woman being the translation of Firiel in every other work, whether it's Numenor or Adventures of Tom Bombadil or The Lord of the Rings, every other place it means mortal woman.
Well, my only thought really is that, he is multilingual. He is a professor of philology. He's doubles as a professor of ancient, languages and English. And so, this just is right in his wheelhouse. If there was ever anybody to, make consistency between the ancient languages and languages he made up for his works, he is the master. This is why world building can't really ever have a proper definition without Tolkien being in the definition. This is at the very, very roots of every single thing that makes world building great is names and places and sequential developments of places and has anybody ever seen the family trees that are associated with this work? It's insane. It really is truly not insane. It's sane.
It's
exhaustive.
It's hyper sane. It's hyper sane is what it is. Can we create a character?
I like that word.
Can we create a character in the Lord of the Rings named Mary? Sure, you can. I think that's a very Hobbit name. I think that could be like one of Samwise's granddaughters or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only real comment
what,
I have.
What is it?
Celebrate it. It's not that I don't study the names as much, except they're so beautiful. I will say one thing though. I would love to add, maybe not now, but before we leave this section. What is our favorite names? If we had to pick a name or two that just we personally love, and why, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, you know what?
Everybody.
That's a good one. Like Tolkien obviously had his favorites. Hurin and Firiel and Luthien were names that just came up again and again and again and again. One name that he always tried to get into the book, but his son wouldn't let him, was Goodchild. That was going to be Sam's last name, and he told Christopher, "I know you wouldn't hate this, so I'm not going to do it." You know me, I love the names. I really do. And I think the name that I like the most is Glorfindel. I just love saying it. I love just the meaning that it's just that he has golden hair, and that's really all there is to it, that they just named him the golden-haired one. Sid?
I want to jump back to the question that came in about naming Mary, and I just noticed something. As far as I can tell, there are absolutely no biblical names in the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings. And Miriam and Mary, which is the English version of Miriam, are biblical names. Can you guys think of any biblical names? I think
Wow. Okay, that's...
Hold on just a sentence. I
yeah.
strongly believe...
But that's Samwise.
I strongly believe that he intentionally avoided biblical names. And Sam was Samwise. And what most people don't know is Samwise means half-wit. It was not a compliment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you might be... The thing is that when you talk about biblical names, there are just as many names in the Bible as there are in the Silmarillion. So it could be it could be kind of difficult to really cross reference. But
Sid, what's your favorite? What's your favorite word? Your favorite name?
Favorite name?
Just love.
I think Sid might agree with David in the chat. Is it Goldberry?
I could have gone with Goldberry, but actually, I'm going to go with Olorin.
Ooh, Olorin.
You start to look into...
I love that one.
Gandalf as the dreamer and giver of dreams.
Yeah. It's related to Olos, which is not only dream, but also vision. And I've always interpreted Olorin, it's not specifically glossed as being the dreamer. But yeah, no, that's a really good one. Matt, what about you? You're the one that asked the question. Now you get to answer the question.
Well, I don't even have an idea, so I don't know why I brought it up. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I have two, but for different reasons. I actually have three, but I'll start with, I just love the word, I just love the name Morwen.
Morwen.
I know that it's Welsh for maiden, but what I liked about the fact that he used it was that the fact that in his developed languages, the word more, the prefix more, it means dark or black. And she was herself black-haired. This is, of course, Turin's mother.
It's Dark Maiden, by the way.
Yeah, Dark Maiden. Yeah. And she has black hair, absolutely gorgeous raven hair. And she's very beautiful, described as one of the most beautiful women. Tolkien has said these kind of compliments about 3 or 4 women in his writing, and she is one of the 3 or 4 that he discusses as being the most beautiful up until that period of time, perhaps might be the sequentially accurate way to put it. But I love the word Morwen.
She was also called Ethelwen as well, which is elf fair. Yeah.
Elf fair. Yeah, meaning she looked well. Her son Turin was
the Valiant.
He had a name. He had a nickname too that
Turambar.
Turambar, that basically meant. That's a different name. There was a name he had, a nickname that
Mormigel.
was.
Mormigel.
Elven.
The black sword.
Well, yes, but there was another one. I can't remember it right now. It was about him.
Turin? I'll look it up.
Looking like an elf. That he was so fair. So.
I think you're talking about Tur, not Turin. Because Turin was all beat up.
Okay.
You're talking about Tur.
Yeah. Anyway, so
you're talking about one of my favorite characters.
Tur. That's what it was. But no, you were right, and I am also right, because there is a passage that talks about Turin when he was younger being raised as being often confused with one of the dark-haired Noldor.
Yeah.
Anyway, blah blah blah. So the other one I really always liked is Indus.
Tolkien loves names that start with I for women as well, if you notice.
Yeah, and it didn't have a beautiful, I ending or N ending. It was a very uncommon name, DIS. And I always liked her name because it was unique, and she was a unique person who was the second wife of
She almost sort of didn't get her due in the story. Now
No.
we have a few minutes left here. I'm gonna stop the timer because I wanted to read something to you guys. We talked about Firiel meaning she that sighs, and we talked about how mortality and final breath is very related, but we also should talk about the breath of the world and how a sigh being an end to something is reflected in the Return of the King when we get the fall of Sauron. It's first depicted from the perspective of the characters that are there, which is primarily Gandalf and Aragorn and Imrahil. But then in the next chapter, we go back in time a little bit, and it tells us the perspective of Faramir and Éowyn as they stand in Gondor watching it all go down, and they're sort of falling in love. And it's said that the earth sighed when Sauron's form blew away on the wind, and that was also sort of as close as he'll ever get to any kind of death. Now, I have a little bit to read you, which unfortunately I'm having a hard time finding right now. Where is it? Oh, where did I put it? Oh, no. All right, give me a moment to grab it again, because it was in my email. It was in my email. Yeah. All right, I found it. Okay. Here we go. We got it. I'm going to read this to you guys. We know that the destruction of the ring, the eruption of Mount Doom, and the fall of Sauron at Barad-dûr sounded and felt like to the ears, eyes, and hearts of Éowyn and Faramir on the parapet of Minas Tirith. But no tale has come to us of how it looked from a land on the other side, far to the east, and a people equally affected by the War of the Ring, for no tale of these people came to Frodo to be written into the Red Book of Westmarch, the only history we have of the end of the Third Age. 3 days ago, thunder and fire flashed in the west, and the earth shook. For weeks before that, the sun sank into brown clouds by 3 o'clock each afternoon. We've had our fields stripped to feed the soldiers, filling the mountain borders to the west all season, and last year as well. Some say war, some say the volcano awakens, some say black magic. I and Eldy here at Lake Nurnen say nothing, but am certain of all three. I am as old as anyone here, a grandfather and elder at 40. The land is lush and the harvests rich. We are treated well, not like the orc slaves and the endless caravans of food wagons or headed to feed the war, but barely enough is left for us to eat each winter. Babies and old folks die even here in the sweet southern land, and plague too many years sweeps through as if we are accursed. But now, for the first time since before I was born, the clouds are white, except when laden with rain, and the sky is blue after 4 in the evening, even in the west. Some great news will come sooner or later. The war lost, I wonder, I hope. I stare blankly into the sunset of an unknown future. And the slaves of Mordor he released and gave them all to the lands around Lake Nurnen to be their own. Aragorn's pronouncement in The Steward and the King at the end of The Return of the King. So, that's a little bit about what I just alluded to, and you might know, of course, that is not a Tolkien written story there, except for that last bit, that one little line that tells us what Aragorn did. That was actually written by none other than, Sid Kemp. Isn't that something?
Not surprised.
It was wonderful. The voice you gave it was wonderful and not what I thought of.
Oh, really? Interesting. You know, it occurs to me you've never come to my reading streams. You should do that. We just did, because last week, we were supposed to do this show last week, and Matt couldn't be here, so I decided to move some things around, and actually, we did The Two Towers, and I just got through Helm's Deep. And, you know, that's fun because you start to read very fast, you know, and get all excited and everything. But, yeah, that was one of Sid's fan fictions that you could read on his AO3, Archive of Our Own, which that's also why I brought it up for Walter, because Walter wants to review fan fictions for his fledgling YouTube channel that's going to happen soon. Anyway, guys, that has been our first section. I just want to go back into the chat because when Matt brought up what is your favorite name, by the way, another one that I love, and this is related to what you said, Sid, is Mithrandir. Love that one. Mithrandir. Just love saying it. People in the chat were answering. Firefoot, which was Aemir's horse. Snowmane. Let's see. Khazad-dûm. That's another one. Gondolin. Let's see. Anonleia? Anonleia? Oh, that's a place in Aemon, right? That's a good one. Nan-Tasarinen. Oh, that's an interesting one. That's very obscure, David. Nan-Tasarinen is where Galadriel says that she'll meet Treebeard when the world is reborn. It's a little region in Beleriand that might be where the Ents actually awoke. Really good. Barad-dûr is another one. It just sounds scary. You're right, Tommy. Nargothrond. We're getting a lot of names of places, and we hadn't thought of that when we were answering the question of names of places are also really wonderful, aren't they?
But Shadowfax.
Shadowfax is a great one. Yeah, we got a lot of horses and a lot of places, right? Okay. Beleriand is a great one. Beleriand, I mean, you guys know my favorite place in Middle-earth is Lindon, but specifically Mithlond. That's another great one. I like that Mithril.
You know what? I gotta cut in.
Mithlond.
I gotta cut in here. Have you guys ever realized that Eregion is actually air region, as in before
yes,
region?
of course, Eregion. Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
I wonder how many of our viewers have caught that little play on words there from Tolkien. And
Loth.
we're talking about, John, so go ahead. I mean, it's really cool.
Lothlorien, Walter, is a very hasty way of saying it. I prefer Laurel and Dorinan. I just thought we could say, do you realize? And I was like, oh, here it comes in my head. Do you realize that Eregion is before
Well,
region?
you know that, but I'm wondering how many people are watching.
Oh no, I just
that.
wanted to sing a bar of "Do You Realize?" That's
So for most people don't know that air means before. We know this, but a lot of people don't know that air is to before, and Eregion, air before region, the region before. But, it's just it's totally Tolkien. It's just beautiful.
We'd better stop soon before anyone starts typing in the chat full Entish names. It takes up a half hour.
No, we don't have the time for any Entish names.
That's because they're worth taking a long time to say.
Yes, anything that you're worth saying is worth taking a long time to say. Okay, guys, we're actually going to come over to here because I need a bathroom break before we move on to the next section. So I'll be right back, guys.
Well, Sid and I are going to tap dance and sing a song. How's that, Sid?
Sing Do You Realize?
Oh, actually, Matt, do you remember the last thing you said before John came back? Because there was something I wanted to say in reply, and I'm trying to remember it.
Was it related to names?
Yeah, was the last thing you said about names, or
was it related to? Let's see if I can jog your memory and mine at the same time. Was it related to the uncommon nature of the name Indus?
what was that? No,
just that he doesn't end a lot of. He doesn't end a lot of.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There was the one right before that.
Morwen.
Yes, it was Morwen.
Dark-haired maiden.
Yeah, a point of folklore and history. We naturally, when we think of color and people, we think of skin color. Mm-hmm. This was not true in the Celtic lands.
Yes, that's true.
A black-haired man was called a black man, and a fair man was blonde.
Where did I just walk into?
Just a comment. A comment on Morwen. A comment on Morwen that it's actually the case in Celtic, both folklore and history, that people were described not by the color of their skin as we do, but by the color of their hair. So Morwen meant black-haired woman,
and the content of their character.
Yeah, and then it goes into character as well.
A little bit
Wait,
too.
well, I think with that they would call you something like Blackheart.
Oh, and who got called that in the Silmarillion?
Aeol the Dark Elf.
Ungoliant called Melkor.
Blackheart. That's right. She did call him Blackheart. Okay. Quick linguistic quiz.
Talk about the pot calling the kettle black.
What for the chat and for my fellows here? What does Ungoliant mean? What is the meaning of Ungoliant?
Well, I'm guessing that it's
Unlight.
related to Ungol, as in Cirith Ungol.
Nope.
No connection, Ungol and Ungoliant?
No connection there. No. The linguistics go further back to primitive Quendian. See, I knew that Walter knew it because we talked about this last night. It's Gloomweaver. Weaver of Gloom, yeah. Gloomweaver.
What did I just say? I came up with maker of unlight is what I came up with.
Yeah, I mean that's not too far off.
My recollection was it is Gloomweaver. Yes.
I mean that's really close there, you know.
Because Goliant is light, and is the undoing of light, the unmaking of light. Of course, she was the great consumer and devourer of light. Now put your mind around that kind of magic.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the whole theme of
Cirith Ungol.
Webs.
Yeah, Cirith Ungol is the spider's cleft, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it is related to Ungoliant because she's the spider.
Yeah, I mean he made Ungol mean spider in the Third Age, but Ungoliant was much from a much earlier period.
Yeah. But what you were just talking about links to the weaver. We've talked about this in past sessions. The weavers of webs of light and dark. You have Luthien and her mom, whose name's escaping me.
Melian
as weavers of webs of light, contrasted with Ungoliant and her children.
There is a darkness to Luthien, not an evil darkness, but a beautiful darkness. Like, she is the nightingale, she is the daughter of the night. She puts you to sleep. She has that dark mantle that she uses to fly, and I mean, like I said, there is a
cloak herself.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
stuff is serious.
Yeah, and then we see that reflected in Arwen because she's raven-haired and sort of a mysterious character as well. And there was one of my favorite conversations in The Lord of the Rings between Gimli and Éomer, when Gimli comes to Éomer and he says, "I have seen Galadriel," or I'm sorry, Éomer comes to Gimli and he says, "I have seen Galadriel, and I cannot say she is the most beautiful woman in Middle-earth, but that's only because I've also seen Arwen." And Gimli says, "You prefer the morning, and I prefer the night."
No other way around.
Well, when we have
you're right, other way around. I prefer the morning, you prefer the night. Yeah.
I hearken to these in my mind, to these passages in the Silmarillion about how dark Luthien is willing to go to defeat evil is how dark she is. She will stand. The passage in the Silmarillion of what she puts to sleep and how she does it. She is fearless and she is brutal.
We got heavy metal lyrics in the chat right now.
Yeah. This is a line of female power with Melion's web that protected her husband's kingdom being right next to Ungoliant's web.
Yeah.
And then Galadriel's web that protected Lothlorien, being where Arwen grew up, and Luthien as also a web weaver.
And it's right by Sauron as well, because Mirkwood's right there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. Good.
All right.
Good segment.
We're going to move on to the next segment, which is going to be Sid's segment. Sid, now I know that we started this last month and that we're just sort of picking it up, but still I'm going to give you a 2-minute intro where you could maybe catch us up a little here. So go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm going to move straight ahead into last time we talked about the origin and creation of hobbits. Now I want to go into what I call peculiar habits of hobbits and hobbit history. I want to begin with wanderings because we ended last time by pointing out that the hobbits went from essentially the Gladden Fields by several names to the Shire. But it turns out that that pathway, which is at the southern edge of Arnor and north of Gondor, was traveled by all kinds of what the Númenóreans and their descendants would have called lesser people. Hobbits, Gondorigan and the Peukelmen, probably the Dunlendings at an earlier time, and certainly the Rohirrim, all traveled along that same path. So it was a path of westward in migration into the Númenórean lands, Gondor and Rohan, for all kinds of, in one sense or another, little people. But we don't have their stories. We have only one story out of all of that, which is the story of the hobbits and the Shire. And Tolkien, by doing that, it's part of what turns his creation of stories into literal world building. We now know that for every story of a people, there are 3 or 4 stories of other people who are mentioned whose stories
10
we
seconds.
don't know. And this sense of stories we don't know is what makes it a history. I want to throw out a question
Okay.
for you guys.
Let me set up the 30-minute timer real quick.
Okay.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Let's hear the question.
Who are the protectors of the Shire? Now, there's one I don't want you to mention. Don't mention Tom. We'll cover him separately. But who are the protectors of the Shire? How is it that the Shire is kept safe through an age of the utter collapse of all of Arnor around them? And I'll let you guys pick up and talk about that.
Well, we know that in the very late Third Age that Gandalf asked the Rangers to watch over the Shire, and that was specifically something that the Shire folk did not know about. That they didn't know that they had these Dunedain out there keeping an eye on things. But they also, and this is really, we can't discount the fact that they protected their own borders very well themselves. They had an invasion of Huarns from the Old Forest that they managed to beat back and build a barrier that withstood the test of time. They fought off goblins when the river froze and wargs came into their land. They managed to fight them back as well. The hobbits get quite fierce when they're to be honest, there's no better word. The sacred land is threatened in any sort of way, and when they forgot to do that, and some of the hobbits let in the outside influence, all it took was some words from Merry and Pippin to rouse them into, the scouring of the Shire. And we also must say that Gandalf himself was keeping an eye on things quite a bit, because he not only loved these little people, but he knew there was something important that was going to come of the Shire. I don't think he knew what it was, but he knew that they were going to play some sort of role in what he was doing.
Matt, I'm going to ask you, is there anything earlier than what John mentioned?
Yeah, way earlier. To the dawn of the creation of the people that became hobbits.
No, we said we weren't going to talk about Tom yet.
Yeah, we're not going to. We're leaving Tom off for a moment.
I'm not talking about.
Okay. Okay. You have something else. Let's hear. I'm very curious to hear this then.
Well, their biggest protector wasn't Gandalf or the Rangers. It was really themselves, and not because of their borders. The thing about it is that they had no real desire for power. I mean, who cares what a bunch of gophers are doing in Tasmania? The world doesn't care about really what they're doing, and because they're not part of any great power struggle or a trade route or accumulation of wealth, they don't draw dragons, they don't do anything that really is on the radar screen for everything that is going on in the first and second, third age, really, because they're just a bunch of, like I said, gophers that live in Tasmania, Tasmanian gophers. Who cares what they're doing? They're just living their own life. And because they're living their own life in the way that Eru intended them to be naturally from the origin of their species, they were protected in the fact that they weren't really concerned with the trappings and the power struggles of the world. And that naturally immunized them and protected them in a lot of ways from anybody really caring about too much of what they were doing. I mean, who really needs to invade? I mean, nothing to invade and take over. What are you gonna do? Get a big store of long bottom leaf and some dead fish in a barrel? I mean, you don't have.
That
I mean,
was
you don't
good
have
enough for Saruman.
good enough. Well, that was good enough for him to trade, but not good enough for him to necessarily, for anybody up to him to that point, other than to invade that area. So that by the fact that they were what they were and what they had become and were their whole history was kind of their greatest defense. They were just very simplistic and not something that people really needed to worry about.
Mogul, I need you to ban that guy, please. I also want to mention. I'll get back to you in a second, Sid. I just thought they're also surrounded by pretty friendly folks. They've got men to the east, they've got dwarves to the north, and they've got elves to the west.
Yeah, but also in periods of time. Oh, sorry, I said real quick. In all the periods of time of the struggles of those men and elves, and everything that's gone on in all that history, they still, yes, they're protected, but only because they're not of any harm to anybody. They're not even an ally. They don't field any armies to help them. They don't field any armies to stop them. They don't field anything to protect or take over or control. So they are really, really, really low grade, not on the radar.
Though it is said that they sent one small batch of fighters.
High Volksha.
Yeah.
Archers specifically, yeah. But it's
to protect the kingdom of Arthedain, and Arthedain did protect them.
Arthedain
did protect them.
They fought,
and then the Rangers were the descendants of that.
They did claim that they sent archers off to fight the Witch King, and I think this goes back to what Matt was saying. Actually, there's no record of that in Mannish records or Elvish records. It's only in Hobbit records, and some people have interpreted that as being, well, maybe they just made that up and it's not true, it's just something that they say, or maybe it's just because, like what Matt said, they just don't get noticed, they don't get into the history books, and it's like what Merry said to Theoden, they don't get to be in the great songs of the great tales.
And I think that is directly related to Frodo's ability to carry the ring.
Yes.
And Sam's ability. Remember that when the ring tries desperately to corrupt Sam, he suddenly has this vision of becoming the greatest gardener in the world and can only laugh.
And so and he didn't even want that.
Yeah, this lack of ambition is in fact both what keeps the hobbits alive for thousands of years and what keeps the hobbit who evolves in a certain particular way to be the ring bearer. So and that fits with my central theme from last month, that Eru makes things happen at a very big level, creating an entire species. Tough as dwarves, utterly disregarded by everybody, and somewhat immune to the ring. And now I'll bring in our favorite person. Tom Bombadil calls himself the master, but Goldberry explains the master is simply someone who cannot be caught by others. He's not a master of others. He's simply free.
He's the master of himself. He's his own
master. He's the master of himself. And similarly, the hobbits are masters of themselves. And now we're going to talk, this is where the central point I want to come to. Gandalf says very precisely that Bombadil set the boundaries of his own land, made them very small. Not originally. Originally, he probably toured the whole world. But when he settled down, and no one knows the exact boundary. We do know some of them. We do know that the Great Road from the Brandywine Bridge across out to some point on the way to Bree is one of the boundaries he won't cross, because he rides along one side of it and will neither cross it nor go too far, and leaves the hobbits to make their way on their own. But we also know something else if you read the poetry. Bombadil visited Farmer Maggot and went to a bar, an inn near him. And so clearly at least part of the Shire was to Bombadil his land. I want to propose might have even been all of the Shire. And perhaps Bombadil's presence for those thousands of years did more to both protect and uplift the Shire than anyone has realized. I know this is going to get you running, Matt, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, actually, could I go first? Because I know Matt has a lot to say, but because I wrote a whole thing about this, about the origins of hobbits and how it is connected to Bombadil. And the Shire, the Suzat, the land that is there, it really is quite curious, that it was uninhabited, because we have dwarves that live to the north, we have elves that live to the west, we have men to the east and to the south, and here we have this beautiful, pristine land, just, fertile and green with clean water and fresh air. Why wouldn't anybody settle there? Until some of the hobbits came out of Breeland, and they found it, and they discovered it, and they said to the king of Arthedain, "Can we live there?" And he says, "You know what? You can have that land as long as you keep the roads upkept. You can have it, and you can govern yourselves as you will." And so, yeah, I mean, of course, I think that this is Bombadil's children coming home in a way, not literal children. I have, like I said, I have an article about this. You go to my Quora account, click on my name, and look at my pinned answer, and it's a very long thing about the possible origin of hobbits and how it connects to Bombadil and Goldberry. But yeah, that land being that, because we know the hobbits came from the east. Even before the Vales of the Anduin, they came out of the sands of the east, what we would call Rhûn. And they went all over the place, all over the north of Middle-earth. The Vales of the Anduin was just one place that they existed in, the stores at least. But they all wound up coming to Breeland. They all wound up living in Bree at some point. And then a lot of them go over to the Shire. Not all of them, because even in the Third and Fourth Age, there were still hobbits in Bree. But why is it that these three different people, the Harfoots, the Stores, and the Fallowhides, all wind up migrating to the same place, separate of each other, and then discovering an untouched, beautiful land that has never been inhabited? You can't tell me that wasn't set aside for them, and it would be very hard to tell me that old Tom wasn't involved in that.
Yeah, and I've got some evidence for that, too.
All right, Matt, you go ahead, take it away.
Well, there's a few things. One thing is that the Withywindle, the source, is Tom Bombadil's house. I don't think very many people know that. It starts there and travels west. And 9.5 miles due west of the Withywindle and the Old Forest is the Shire. They're not very far away. They're basically horizon. You can walk there in an afternoon. It's very close. And I believe that because this is the Old Forest, I think that it's, and this goes back to the very beginning of time. I don't think it's just Tom, although Tom is the master of wood, water, and hill, and I take that as literal. But I believe that, that there are Ents and Huorns, even in the Third Age, that still live there. And I personally believe that when you have the master of wood, water, and hill, and I think the evidence shows, at least the balance of evidence shows that Tom and Treebeard are the oldest. That it's very highly likely that the Ents and the Huorns that live in the know who Tom is, and if Tom asked them to do something, they would probably do it. And I think over a period of time, talk about fan fiction, possibilities. This is my favorite one, because if you've got that kind of thing going on there, these are this is a protected place, a kind of a spooky place for a lot of people to be because of the way that things are set up there. But just the fact that the three of us completely agree with this in all of our research. I mean, we've got combined 100 plus years of research on this, and we all agree that between your study and Sid's study and my study, that there is plenty of evidence that says this is an enchanted special place that's been set aside. And one of the things that harken back not only supports what John and Sid are saying, but also kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, is that the hobbits are as close to Tom and Goldberry in one sense that there is of people in Middle-earth. They're very simple. They're just very, very simple, enjoying the things in life. I think probably the most evil, corrupted person is probably Lobelia Sackville Baggins, is stealing.
No.
Stealing people's silverware from
her son was the one that was really bad. Let's be real.
Well, what I'm saying is, I mean, this is as far down the road of corruption as you get in this.
Yeah,
fire.
I mean, you'll get ones that are get hobbits that are rude or
right.
uncouth.
Yeah. I think Matt is describing the most rude, uncouth.
Yeah.
But her son was corrupted by Saruman, so that's a special case.
It is. Yeah, it is. You're right, though, John. But you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that as a special case.
I just had to defend Lobelia. She might have been a Karen at one point, but it ended well for her.
It did. But my point is that the scale is pretty narrow when it comes to, right and wrong, deviations on the scale when it comes to the Shire. So, I just think in the end that yes, Tom is a big part of it. Sid didn't want us to talk about Tom, but the hobbits line up this way just in their natural polarity, and so that is a great defense to them, because they just don't strike anybody's radar screen as an issue that anybody has to be afraid of or fearful of. I mean, oh really? They put the 30-man archer posse once. I mean, give me a break. I mean.
Hey, and look though, but this goes back to like my other big paper that I have, which is not on Quora, but it'll be in our book eventually. But about Tuor and how Tuor has this connection to every single character in the Legendarium previous and after, and that the architects of it, the three architects, are Iluvatar and Tom Bombadil, and four really, Iluvatar. Well, there's three, and then there's their agents. There's Iluvatar and his agent, Tom Bombadil. There's Nienna and her agent, which is Gandalf. And there's Ulmo and his agent, which is Tuor. And those three and their three agents shape the future of Middle-earth. And, and what we see here is the creation and facilitation of a race of people that will go unnoticed. And what is the first thing we hear about hobbits? That they live in holes, they're shy of the big people, and they're really good at not being seen.
And even dragons don't know what they smell like.
Yeah, and so then we get to this thing that's just going to lead to the downfall of Sauron.
Yeah.
Sid?
Yep.
Just how much time do we have left? Because
let me check, actually. You got 12 and a half minutes here.
Okay. I will not take all of that, but I have three things that are really important to make sure we get to before we're done.
Okay, yeah.
And first of all, it was what was the last thing you said, John?
That the first thing we really hear about hobbits are about how they live in holes, they're and that they're unseen and that they're shy and they don't get noticed. And this is what leads to Sauron's downfall, not noticing hobbits. I'm going to
propose that we don't know exactly when Eru created hobbits. I'm going to throw out a wild card. I believe they were created after dwarves, and Eru learned something from Aule. Aule wanted to create a mortal who could withstand incredible enemies because he knew about Morgoth.
Oh, I love where you're
Jacob-
going with this. Yeah.
Yeah. And where do dwarves live? Under the ground.
Yeah.
Where do hobbits like to live? They can't go nearly so deep, but they like to live under the ground. And what is that symbolically? Both species are humble. They're not out there, that greedy and envious and looking for great things until the ring corrupts them.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the dwarves there. And so I think Eru got an idea from Aule and said, okay, next step is create a race that will be so strong that they can defeat the ring. That's one idea.
I want to point out one. Oh,
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Keep it short there.
Yeah.
And give me it back. Go ahead, Matt.
oh, thank you. I was going to point out that the history of the hobbits is that they would build their caves, their burrows, next to the rivers, under trees, wood, water, and hill.
Yep. Absolutely.
There you go.
It's jammed underneath the three main things that Tom Bombadil is master.
Yeah.
But anyway, for the sake of this argument, that's what this is.
Yeah,
And I don't
absolutely.
find that accidental.
Yeah. And just to comment,
I agree.
a comment on what you said. I'll give it back to you in a second. Just a comment because I love where you're going with this, because it was said very specifically that the creation of the dwarves, that he made them a certain way to withstand Morgoth, and of course Iluvatar being the only one who knows how this all ends, and that he knows that there is a foe beyond Morgoth, and once Morgoth is gone, they're going to have to deal with Sauron. He's like, making them smaller. There's something to that.
Right, because it is small hands of
Yeah.
small people,
Yeah.
as Elrond says over and over, that come up and make the difference. And, however, we were saying how wonderful the Shire was. All three of us, and everyone else thought so. There's one group of people who disagree, and they are crucial to the story.
The river stores.
There are a band of river stores who don't like the Shire, and we don't know why. My guess.
I have a guess.
You
go first. Go ahead.
My guess is attitudinally, it was, hey, we're stores. We're better than this. We like rivers. Those people can't even swim. Blank them. We're heading off. We're heading back to where we came from. And what is the result of that? When,
Gollum finding the ring
yeah, but where did he find it?
in the
Who
river.
dropped it?
Oh, Isildur.
Right. So where Isildur dropped the river, there's a bunch of hobbits living next door,
Yeah.
waiting and when the ring senses Sauron and wants to wake up, who grabs it? A hobbit. What does he do? He goes under a mountain to hide it because he's afraid, because he's wicked and evil, because he's drawn to the roots of things and darkness. And this is how, through, I'm going to say, 3 heroes.
Yep. You're correct. You're correct, Matt. But Matt is saying Deagle found the ring. But yes,
Deagle found the ring.
you're
but
correct.
It
How
is
did you read my mind?
Yeah.
No, there's a Matt in the chat room.
Oh,
But
because I was thinking that
but
exact same thing.
I'm saying there were 3 ring bearers. All of them heroes. One of them a deeply fallen hero. And they each did their job as destined by Eru himself. One to take the ring and hide it for centuries where Sauron could not find it because the user of it simply wanted to catch fish and baby orcs. Then, when it was time for that to end and the ring wanted to be found, Eru makes sure that a hobbit gets whacked on the head, falls to the earth, and his small hand, fumbles and touches the ring. And the ring is carried to a place that Sauron has never heard of. The Shire. He doesn't even know it's to the west.
He has no idea where it is.
He has no idea where it is.
And he has quite a hard time finding that information.
Yeah.
Which is another key weirdness to this, which is the Shire is so far away on the spectrum of anything Sauron cares about, wants, understands, blah 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 blah, that no wonder the whole place is completely alien.
Yeah.
He doesn't know nothing about it at all.
Yeah. And those who do know about it, keep it secret. One last thought, and then I'll turn to you guys to close out. And then Bilbo never gets married, and therefore is good for a late-in-life adventure. I believe Tolkien had a real resistance to the idea of sending married men off into danger. He accepted it was necessary in World War I, but I think he thought of it as horrific. So I believe,
I have a different thought about why the river stores remigrated. Because okay, go ahead. Yeah, just finish your thought. Yeah.
But as a result, Bilbo trains Frodo to a quality where he's capable of becoming an elf friend, and that is not small. That is profound. And he's uplifted by Bombadil and Goldberry when he stays with them for a few days. And he becomes something totally different by the time he enters the underground tomb and defeats the White. And again, he grows again when he's stabbed by the Morgul blade, and he becomes one who can bear the ring to the fighter. And all of these actions take us to the success, and I'm going to give a tiny hint of what's up for next month. Some of these things raise very worrisome questions about Eru. Think about that for a month, and I'll be back. I'm going to leave the rest of my time to you guys.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the river stores, but it came up in the chat, and I've tried. I'm going to try it again. For both Matt and for Sid, say it after me. Sauron.
Sauron.
Yeah. Not
Sauron.
Because somebody in the chat was like, oh, come on, Sauron. And I'm like, I know. I've been trying to get them to say Sauron. Yeah. Okay, so what do we know about first of all, we know that not all stores remigrated, because there are stores and storage hobbits in the Shire. I believe Pippin's a store, for example. But
Frodo's parents who loved boating on the river.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. I mean, Frodo's like a bit of a Harfoot as well, but they're all sort of intermingled at that point in the story. They've become one thing, and there might be something to we don't like mixing with these Harfoots and Falahides, especially since it's hinted that the stores are the oldest of the Hobbit type, since they're the ones that are the most like men. They're the only ones that can have facial hair, for example. But anyway, my thought is, well, where do we learn about the river stores outside of the Lord of the Rings? Like we know what Gandalf said about Gollum and his history and everything. A lot of it was a little bit of conjecture, but what do we know about Deagle and Smeagol? They were kind of these nasty little hobbits. They were going on a fishing trip. They got into a fight over a ring, and one of them gets killed. And what does Smeagol keep saying to him? Give it to us, it's our birthday. And there was a person who wrote to Tolkien, and this is in his letters, who said, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. Why is Smeagol expecting a birthday present when you've written that hobbits actually give away presents on their birthdays? And Tolkien goes into this long, wonderful description that explains the gift-giving ceremonies that hobbits have, and he says this is a sort of they're separate. They were once in the Shire, and then they remigrated to their point of origin to become more primitive, and that was a conscious choice. Now, your question, Sid, is, well, why did they do that? And my answer is, well, it came up in the gift-giving with topic. They didn't like that. I think they didn't like that level of generosity. Oh, I gotta give away gifts on it's my birthday. It's supposed to be about me. I should be getting it. Yes, my precious. So I think that was a big part of it, the cultural difference. And it wasn't all, hashtag not all stores. It wasn't all the stores, just the ones that really didn't want to be a part of that culture and to engage in those sort of parties and things. They're like, oh man, it used to be so simple. We would be at the river, we'd catch a fish, and now I got to go to Daddy Two-Foot's party and deal with all that. I don't think so.
I agree with you entirely, but I want to add one point. From that same letter of Tolkien's, it was almost certainly a clan. Until you read that letter, you don't realize how the Hobbits' large families were very much built on the model of clans, and Tolkien knew his anthropology of clans. Excellent work. And it was a clan who picked up and said, we're out of here. It's very clear.
Yeah, he said it was a very large family, a clan, like you said, and I mean, and they were all kind of nasty. He said Gollum, Smeagol, he was bad. Deagle was bad. They were all bad. I mean, look at how long it took them to kick Smeagol out of their community.
Yeah,
that's what I want to pick up on right there. Is that,
Matt? Yeah, you're gonna get the. Yeah. I'm gonna stop the timer because we're less than a minute, but I'm gonna give you the final thoughts here.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna say that. This clan has got a wayward, rebellious nature to them to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the fact that they're stewards, they are river dwellers. They're a little primitive on that end of the spectrum, and these two guys, Diego and Smeagol, are friends. I mean, we have no reason to believe that they don't know each other. They fish a lot. They're on the same in the same river fishing with one another. They come across the most powerful artifact ever made in Middle-earth, unfortunately for them. And that's just a bad combination. They both start fighting over the ring almost immediately because of the power of the ring and what it has over these two relatively primitive, possibly borderline, semi-borderline, morally challenged. I wouldn't say corrupted.
They're ne'er-do-wells.
They're right.
Yeah.
But they're still living a simple life until
they're not evil.
Right.
But they're criminal
they got some
types.
Yeah, they got some issues, and these guys are going to go on and be little dudes, the way they are the rest of their lives. Had it not been for the ring, that is clear.
Yeah, and the ring having been in the bottom of the river for a couple thousand years, and like Gandalf says, only one hand can wield the ring at a time, and that person is not going to want to share it. So as soon as it's like, oh, there's two of them, he mentioned in that same letter that out of the two, Deagle and Smeagol, Gollum, Smeagol, he was the bigger, stronger one. That's the one the ring wanted.
Yep, and I agree with that. And I think the ring also, since it's got so much of his power and so much of Sauron in the ring, after that much time, knowing that Sauron actual as opposed to Sauron ring. Sauron actual and the Sauron the ring are trying to find each other. I think the call to them was really out of very, very strong desperation. Finally have somebody who's going to find me, and I'm going to put the juju on them. Mm-hmm. And it was a full dose of juju on exactly the wrong kind of little hobbits to be able to maintain their mental balances. And so, I just want to point that out.
Tolkien makes a specific point about the most essential depth of the juju on Gollum. And it's that Gollum wasn't totally evil. He felt incredibly guilty about killing Smeagol.
Yeah, that's why he gaslit himself.
And he hated himself so much that the ring had control of him from that moment on.
Gandalf even says that the murder was like a repressed memory that had to be drawn out.
Exactly. And he was terribly guilty about it. And that was what trapped him for 400 years. So that power of guilt is utterly profound. and destructive, but of course it went ultimately to the ring's disadvantage because it kept the ring hidden because poor Gollum wanted to hide from everyone, including himself.
Yeah.
I just want to, this is unrelated, but I just wanted to let you guys know that on the Twitch side of the chat, there's somebody in here, and we talked about this, Matt and me, earlier. There's somebody on here who is a Lord of the Rings newbie, they said. They've seen the movies, and they don't know anything, and they found us, and they're really enjoying this. They don't really know. Like, I've been having a separate conversation in chat here. I just told them Gandalf's an angel. They didn't know that. And they're just like, wow. So I just want to let you guys know that, even though, yes, we're talking about things on a really high level. Yeah, we're talking about things on a high level. As Matt likes to point out, between the three of us, we have over 100 years of study in studying, the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and all this stuff. We love it when people come in who just saw the movies and are just like really interested to hear about the characters. That's really cool. Okay, Matt, your section now. Let's get on to. You have an interesting topic. You texted me about it earlier. I'm gonna get the. I don't want that. Hold on a second. I just gotta get that out of the way. All right, we're gonna set it for 2 minutes, and you're gonna do your intro. Okay, unless anybody needs a break.
I'm good.
Okay, here. All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the subject of magic, but not just magic. I'm going to talk about this passage in the Silmarillion. And basically, it doesn't start there, but it's the main passage that I'm looking at in chapter 22, the Ruin of Doriath.
Oh, okay.
And I call it the Substance of Arda passage. And it's talking about Melian, that in that form, in the form that she took from being Maya and becoming elvenkind, that in that form, it says, in quotes, in that form she was able to produce Luthien. She was able to have power over the substance of Arda. And number 3, she was able to provide defense of Doriath from her girdle, the girdle of Melian. And these are all in the same passage. It's a paragraph. It's a short paragraph, but given a synopsis of this and the word for word proof of the power over the substance of Arda is a big thing related to magic. Say, well, system of magic, there isn't any real magic, and contraire mon frere, there is actual real magic going on here. And there are 2 other passages in the Silmarillion that talk about power over the absolute substances, but you have to be an Ainur to do it. Now, where I'm going with this in the end is, how does this relate to Glaurung and Galadriel? And that's where we're going to go in this segment.
So you're referring to this part, in that form she bore to him Luthien Tinuvial, and in that form she gained a power over the substance of Arda.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. So sorry, that was the timer. Okay, I wanna kick us off with this because I love that passage, and let me just start the timer here real quick for 30 minutes. It's interesting that the wording is that in that form she gained a power over the substance of Arda. Didn't she have that already? It's sort of interesting. She was already an angel, but now she's become temporarily incarnate to be with Thingol. We learned about it in, I think it was Morgoth's Ring, about the Aksan, about what happens when an angel and an elf get together like this, and how they have to sort of keep the form that they're in. Not necessarily incarnate, but as close to it as you can. But it and that the Valar were thinking this is nothing bad, this is fine, but there's a few rules you're going to have to follow. It also sounds like they gave her a little gift there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Sid?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to throw in 2 things. One is there's another passage I will hunt down, very obscure, which Tolkien says is particularly, since she was female, the act of giving birth demanded this and gave this power over the substance of Earth, but also then trapped her in that form.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, for those who don't know the early part of the Silmarillion, what does power over the substance of Arda mean? This is where I think it was only the Valar until Melian. Aule and would raise continents with mountain ranges. And Melkor Morgoth would trash them down and make volcanoes. Ulmo and Manwë made a beautiful, wonderful world, and Morgoth created bitter cold, but as a result invented snow, which was beautiful. There was an incredible battle of the elements of Earth, Arda, Earth itself, done by the Valar. And I don't think any of the Ainur had that level of power over the elements of Arda until Melian. I'm done.
Yeah.
There.
Oh,
Yeah,
Matt,
go ahead,
could I
John.
just? There's also something to, and you know, I'm going to talk about the whole idea of the Valar, or at least some of them, like Ulmo and Nienna. Sort of, we know where this is all going, and we know where all the players need to be. And like I said, it all has to wind up with Gollum destroying the ring and Sauron being defeated. That's how it has to end. She has to be there. She has to have, you know, Luthien. Luthien has to meet Beren, and there's this amazing mixture of what in the first age they called the three kinds: the men, the elves, and the Maiar. So having mortal blood and angel blood and immortal blood all mixed together to get to Aragorn, you know, is really important as well. And I think that they say, well, we're going to need to give these kids some space. We're going to need to. So, because power over the substance of Arda is really used in this passage in a conjunction to the girdle itself, that she basically, hey, they're giving her a lesser version of what they did to the Undying Lands to prevent anybody from getting there. Not a physical barrier, but something where you're wandering and then all of a sudden you get to this point where you're like, I have something really important to do in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, and I know you're heading in this direction, Matt. That was a skill that Galadriel learned from Melian and then applied
with
in
her
Lothlorien.
with her ring of power, with the Elisar, and with her own magical force.
Yes. And also, both lands, Doriath and Lothlorien, were right next to in places inhabited by evil spiders.
That's right.
So the light webs and dark webs.
Isn't it amazing how... I just want to let you guys know in the various chats that we don't really confer with each other that much about what our different topics are going to be, and they all wind up intermingling anyway. Isn't that kind of amazing?
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So I wanted to get back to some other evidence that leads us to a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a conundrum, but something to ponder a decision over. Maybe not a decision, but to ponder some kind of coalescence over. In the Valaquenta, there are two passages, the substance as well. The first one talks about in water, the substance of water. The Ainulindale, or the music of the Ainur, resides the most.
And in Morgoth's ring, it's also said that water is the element in which Morgoth's essence resides the least.
Yeah, exactly. Now, a little few pages later, in the Valaquenta again, it says that Aule has the lordship over all the substances of which Arda is made. End quote. Now, the reason I bring up Melian is because she is Ainur, but she is not Vala. These two previous passages in the Silmarillion are of the Vala powers. And then Tolkien goes on in chapter 22, looks to be like maybe 15, maybe 10 pages later, and gets into this paragraph related to Melian being in that form, the female form. She's able to produce Luthien. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but she's got so much power in that form that she's able to be fully functioning female, to be able to have a fully functioning being, and she herself is not an elf, but she was able to make
But
herself into one.
she made a flesh baby, is what you're saying, even though
That's
she's a
what I'm
spirit.
getting at without getting into the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that almost takes its own 5 seconds of wrapping your mind around. This is literally meaning she is able to have power over the substance of in that form. The second one was she was able to have power over the substances of Arda in that power. Another direct quote. The third one was, and she was also able to use the girdle of Melian in the defense of Doriath. Now, where I'm going with this is to pose to you the general question is, later on we have earlier on in the intro of the Silmarillion, there's an intro quotes a letter from Tolkien that talks about the fact that the rings enhance the natural powers of the possessor to the degree that it approaches magic. Isn't magic, but approaches magic. Now, having read all of these together, what say you about exactly what kind of power Galadriel has as an elf, as just an elf? Because there is often some misunderstandings about her being a white witch, a magical, powerful being, exactly in the way of this. But I think because of her ring, she's approaching magic as opposed to being magic outright in the form that in the way that she can actually have the power over substance. And I want to talk about the clarification of that from both of your points of view.
I'm going to give it to Sid, but I just want to comment on one thing you said, which was the misconception of Galadriel as being a white witch sort of character. We see that out of universe and in universe. Out of universe, a lot of people assume that she's this extremely powerful person, and she is. But Tolkien said that her power was in her wisdom, not in any sort of physical or metaphysical sense. She was a powerful person because she was a protector. She could protect people, and she could guide hearts and minds. That was her role. But also we see it in universe, they oh my God, don't go to Lothlorien. It's the most dangerous place out there. You'll never come out alive. And Éomer even called her a witch or sorceress. He used both words, which Gimli was not happy about. Gimli almost wanted to cut off his head there, But go ahead, Sid. I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, in brief response to what you said, and then on to a new angle. And remember, Boromir had this very much the same attitude as Éomer, and Boromir, as the much more manly, mortal, less Númenórean son of Denethor, believed the mortal's view of Lothlorien and Galadriel, and was extremely intimidated, as it turns out, with good reason.
Yeah.
But going even deeper, I think, Matt, Galadriel answers your question. When either Sam or Frodo asks about elven magic, I think it's Sam, but I'm not sure, she says, I really don't understand what you mean by that word, because you use the same word for what elves do, like me, and what Sauron does.
The deceits of the enemy was what she said.
The deceits of the enemy. Yeah. And what is the opposite of the deceits of the enemy? The truths. The opposite of deceit is truth. She is simply living truly as she is. And we could Tolkien does not use this term, but we could very well use it to keep it simple. To her, and also to Tom and Goldberry, their magic is utterly natural. It's just an expression of who they are and what they do. Enhanced by the ring, but because it's kept within the bounds of the will of Eru, and it is protective, and it is ennobling, because she protects by transferring wisdom, and it is gifting with generosity. Remember the incredible generosity and foresight of creating Earendil's star and giving it to Frodo. How many years did it take to create a Arundel star? I wonder. But she had her mirror. She could know it would be needed. And so that incredible, enduring protection is a simple, natural thing to be for a high elf who's been around the Valar. And I'm going to say that that is the essence. It's something purer than magic. In theological terms, it would be called miracle rather than magic. And magic is seen as egoistic, and miracles are seen as utterly in harmony with God.
Okay, so I'm going to approach it from a little bit of a different angle. Tolkien admitted in his letters and also, I believe, in the foreword to the Silmarillion, that magic is a term that he will admit he does not use consistently. And the earliest that we hear of magic is in The Hobbit, when they say, well, the hobbits don't have magic, but they do have ordinary magic. So it's sort of like saying, well, they don't have magic as you might understand it, but they have this amazing skill. But we learned that that's what the elves do, too. They have these amazing skills, and that's what we view as magic. It doesn't just happen with Sam and Galadriel. It happens a little bit later with the unnamed elf that gives them some rope. And Sam has been just jonesing to get his hands on some rope for a while. And he asks, actually, I think it was Pippin asked, is this a magic rope? And this elf says, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but it's a very good rope. And what happens later? Sam and Frodo use this rope to climb down a cliff in the Emyn Muil, and they said, well, that was useful, but we can't retrieve it. I'm guessing we're just going to have to leave it here. And then suddenly it just comes loose and coils down into this perfect little coil. And Sam's just like, well, that's a fine how do you do? You know, they're told it's not magic. It's just really well made. And then we see something that happens. It's, yes, of course it's magic. But elves don't do magic. They are magic.
Yeah, and that reminds me a similar story that a lot of people can experience. You know, my 5-year-old son asking me, how does the car start? And I say, well, you take this magic key and you put it in this hole here and you turn it and it automatically starts up and then you can drive places. Now, Galadriel's explanation is, well, it's just good rope. And my explanation is, well,
it was some other elf, but yes.
Yeah, my point is, it seems to be magic to the simple-minded. And when you're explaining, well, it's good rope, the elves and the Maiar are explaining something they live with every single day, and they almost get caught up in trying in not really appreciating.
It's mundane to them.
The gulf between what we do every day. It's just really good rope to us. I mean, it's normal rope. Not realizing that you're explaining how this rope works or how this ignition works for this car to basically the equivalent of a 5-year-old, which is this Hobbit, and they think it's magic, and they don't understand what's going on here. So, I just think that's a great. Yeah, go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, yet hobbits have a magic of their own that the big people can't match. Even it's just how well they throw stones, or can't be found.
Yeah.
But also,
or moving without making noise is a really big one. Bilbo constantly, this dwarvish racket.
Yes. So Arthur C. Clarke explained this by saying, any technology sufficiently advanced will appear as magic. And so this is, at that level, that's the boundary we're drawing. But then Tolkien drew the boundary between what I'm using the term natural magic in alignment with Eru and dark magic in contravention of Eru.
Tolkien actually used the phrase natural science as well, too, to describe some of this.
Well, John's recollection of where this is in the introduction to the Silmarillion.
I thought it was that. Yeah,
it's on about the page 6 or 7. Let's see here. The enemy in successive forms is always naturally concerned with sheer domination, and so the Lord of Magic and Machines, and so is the Lord of Magic and Machines. But the problem is that this frightful evil can and does arise from the apparent good root, the desire to benefit the world and benefit the world and others speedily and according to the benefactor's own plans is a recurrent motive. And so what's going on here is
in that passage, machines, in England, they also use the word machinations.
Yes.
So the scheming and the
device,
machination, and device and machine, and there's most obvious in both Grand to destroy the doors of Minas Tirith and all of what Saruman does.
Yeah,
And the whole mind of machination.
I want to. Second, Matt. I want to agree with Sid here. The specific words, like I think the elves just get tired of hearing that word magic because they were like, well, there's devices and devilry and machinations and all this stuff, and then there's skill. Saruman. Every name that he's had, Gandalf has all these different names. Gandalf is Gandalf, and he's Mithrandir, and he's Icanus, and he's all these different names. Aloran. Every name that Saruman has had, Saruman, Tarandor, Curonir, Curumo, means the same thing: skilled man.
Okay, so I want to go back to this section here, in the passage just before the one I read. In the introduction to the Silmarillion,
yeah, go ahead.
It says, I have not, because there is not a word for the latter, the magic, since all human stories have suffered the same confusion. But the elves are there in my tales to demonstrate the difference. Their magic is art, delivered from many of its human limitations, more effortless, more quick, more complete, product engine in unflawed correspondence. And its object is art, not power, subcreation, not domination, and tyrannous or reforming of creation. So my point for bringing this up again is, I agree with you guys totally, but Galadriel is powerful because of the mirror, of the ring, of the things that have been, enchanted and have magical power to them, that she is able to use to the degree that she's able to be wise and artistic in their use. I agree with that.
And Lothlorien itself is a work of art. The way the way that Legolas describes it, and
yes. And so I was just trying to get your idea about Galadriel's use of magic and what Melian is able to do as a Maya in the literal.
I see. We went a little off topic, I guess.
No, we're on topic. I'm trying to make a distinction between, what Galadriel's power is. Some movies did not do it too much service because they made it seem like she was some kind of a white enchantress.
Yeah.
The power that she has is through the ring and through the enchanted objects that she is able to use, and that is different from her mentor, who was Melian, who was truly in command of substance of Arda. The passages clearly show that there is a big difference between the two.
I want to bounce off of that and say what Galadriel does with her ring is also extremely different, even if it's the same in thought, in composition, extremely different from what Elrond does with his ring. We're not told that Rivendell has any sort of timeless quality. We're not told that the seasons are different there. It's sort of just this really nice place, really not even all that different from the Shire, that's quiet and out of the way and very well protected. Whereas Galadriel has created something like the Undying Lands in Middle-earth. And if you think about it, well, who are the bearers of the three? We had all these. We had Gil-galad, and we had Círdan, and we had Elrond, and I'm not counting Gandalf because he's different. Gandalf, he was moving around, and he didn't make himself a realm like some of these other guys did. But Galadriel is the only one of them that's been to the Undying Lands. She knows what it's like there. She knows what it is to experience the beauty of Valinor and Eldamar and Tol Eressëa and all these other places. So she's creating something unique that has never been seen before in Middle-earth, whereas what Melian was doing was saying is Thingol had created something and she was protecting it.
Yeah.
Sid?
Two things. And the power of her ring was preservation.
Yeah.
That's why Lothlorien is different. It's all Elvish. They rarely speak the common tongue. Very different from Elrond, whose gift is related to wisdom and foresight. With Galadriel, it's preservation. And yes, she's making as close as she can to the Undying Lands in Middle-earth. But there's another key piece, and I think this may get to the very heart of what Matt is saying. One key element of all Vala, Maya, and Elvish magic is generosity. It's given away.
Mm-hmm.
Galadriel, as we've already noted, gave the light of Arundel's star that kept Frodo safe and was part of what defeated Shelob and so forth, all the way to Mount Doom. And she gave Gandalf the White new clothes and a new staff. And
incredibly important. And she had that ready. She knew he was going to be the White.
And remember, she saw him while Frodo and Sam were watching the Mirror of Galadriel. And she recognized that it was Gandalf come back. That's what I believe. That's how I read that scene. Because he is seen, once again, wondering. But Frodo says, is it ancient or is it new? I think she saw it was the future. And I just want to finish up on the key point, please.
You're right. Yeah. I was just going to say you're right. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Nobody ever said that to me before. But also, the boat, once it was a funeral boat, it carried a man over Rorris Falls and left the funeral boat completely intact and sent it to his brother. That's the level of connection. And one more. A little box of dirt with a seed in it. That gift changed the Shire.
It restored it and made it better than it was before.
For centuries.
Yeah.
All of Sam's life and well beyond.
How about the thought that now the Shire is a little bit more like the Undying Lands?
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was the only place in the West where people could go to see a melon tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonder. And
how much more time left do we have? Oh, I'm sorry, Sid, keep going.
I had one more sentence.
5.5 minutes.
The difference is that Galadriel's magic came through things, and Melian's gift to the world came through a daughter, a living elf. I think that's the big difference. The power over the elements of Earth is the power not just to create things that are made of the elements, but to create life itself. That's what I'm offering back to you, Matt. And I'll shut up. You guys
I think we come to a nice harmony
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
the real distinction between those two, because that's an often overlooked detail in the legendarium between what kind of magic are we talking about, and what are the differences between this and that. There's a clear line right there between those beings, and we have the proof of it in these passages, in the word-for-word passages that demonstrate there is a line between the two. Now, my last few minutes that I've been saving for, I would love to have you process the ability that Glaurung has to wipe the memory of Nienor when he meets her, being the fact that he is mortal. He's a mortal being. Obviously, he's been corrupted and brought into being, is the way I call it. He's been brought into being by Morgoth and given some of his powers. But as you both know, that amnesia only comes from a couple of ways. Brain damage, blunt force brain damage, or toxic brain damage, a brain that has suffered some kind of infection or toxicity to it. And I would love to hear what you guys think about Glaurung's ability to wipe her mind for the period of probably about 2 or 3 years period of time before she gets her her memory back. Of course,
It was specifically because Glaurung released the curse too that she got it back.
On purpose to let her know
just to mess with her one last time before Glaurung died.
That's right, to release it. Now there's some evidence that it would have been released on his death anyway, but he needed to release it while he was in the throes of death to just be able to enjoy the fact that he's going to suffer from it. So I'm curious about what you think about that mind wiping, and when it comes to this idea over the substances of Arda power and the nature of what Glaurung is. So go ahead.
I'm going to say briefly, I think it is the ultimate, mind wiping and the intention of controlling or limiting the minds of others is the most evil intent, because it is the opposite of what Eru wants for the free peoples. And I want to bring in Saruman here because he bewitched Gandalf into believing that the ring had rolled into the ocean. And that bewitchment lasted nearly 1,000 years, and between the time that Gandalf saw the ring in Bilbo's hand and he figured out what it was 17 years of self-disenchantment, of breaking the geese through his own study, his own wandering to find wisdom. And we don't understand how trapped Gandalf and the entire White Council was by Saruman unless we read that very closely. And similarly, and that entrapment was used for selfishness on the part of Saruman. Glaurung's entrapment of mind wiping was used purely for torture, and but they both had the fundamental worst thing a being can want to do, much less do.
John, any comments? Because I need the last minute to.
I do, but I'm just trying to bring up a specific passage.
I'll say one more thing while we're waiting for John.
Yeah.
And there's an article Tolkien wrote saying, "Yet every soul has the ultimate power to reject all control by others, no matter how dominating it can be."
And that leads me to my last thing, and then I'll give John the last word, if you don't mind, John.
Go ahead. I'm going to stop the timer. We're at a minute anyway.
Thank you. I'm going to segue off for that and let John have last word. That's interesting because, as we see, he releases the spell, and her memory is returned. Therefore, it was never fully wiped. It was always there. It's another example of corruption. Yeah, it was another example of corruption, of cloaking, of fogging the memory to the point of absolute darkness. But it was never removed because he ultimately could not actually remove her personhood, her memory of her own personhood, actually, because that was something from Eru as in a spirited person that has the flame imperishable in her. So he was never able to get at that, and I'm glad that you said all that, because it really kind of was curious about how you guys felt about that. So go ahead. Thanks, John.
Just to read the passage in which Nienor is driven insane and loses her memory here. Therefore, walking at guess, she found the hill, which was indeed close at hand, by the rising of the ground before her feet, and slowly she climbed the path that led up from the east. And as she climbed, so the fog grew thinner, until she came at last out unto the sunlight on the bare summit. Then she stepped forward and looked westward, and there right before her was the great head of Glaurung, who had even then crept up from the other side, and before she was aware her eyes had looked into the fell spirit of his eyes, and they were terrible, being filled with the fell spirit of Morgoth his master. Strong was the will and heart of Nienor, and she strove against Glaurung, but he put forth his power against her. "What seek you here?" he said. And constrained to answer, she said, I do but seek one Turin that dwelt here a while, but he is dead, maybe. I know not, said Glaurung. He was left here to defend the women and weaklings, but when I came, he deserted them and fled, a boaster but a craven, it seems. Why seek you such a one? You lie, said Nienor. The children of Hurin at least are not craven. We fear you not. Then Glaurung laughed, for so was Hurin's daughter revealed to his malice. Then you are fools, both you and your brother, said he, and your boast shall be made vain, for I am Glaurung. Then he drew her eyes into his, and her will swooned. And it seemed to her that the sun sickened, and all became dim about her, and slowly a great darkness drew down on her, and in that darkness there was emptiness. She knew nothing, and heard nothing, and remembered nothing. And then, of course, she strips off all her clothes and runs screaming into the woods, and her brother finds her and marries her, and that's a whole thing. But
oh yeah, well that chapter is highly recommended, by the way, because that's
it's
amazing.
This book is beautiful, by the way. The Children of Hurin. If you haven't read it, I think it's Tolkien's best book. But here's the thing: she looks into his eyes and she sees the spirit of Morgoth. How were the dragons created? Necromancy is the valid answer, and I think the correct answer. To answer your question, Matt, that you put forth to us, how is he able to do this to her when he himself is a mortal creature? Because he's got a little bit of Morgoth in him. He's like another Morgoth's ring. He speaks with Morgoth's voice. He gazes with Morgoth's gaze. He is the agent of the curse upon the children of Hurin. And note here the similarities between Nienor and her father Hurin, and the same things where Morgoth went to Hurin and he put up on a mountain of dead bodies and he said, I am God and I made the world. And what does he say to him? You lie. And then what does Glaurung, what does the dragon say to Nienor? That Turin's a coward. You lie. She's her father's daughter. And he's like, I know. I found you and I'm going to mess with you. Because just the act of talking back to the devil put Hurin in such a terrible position where now he's going to be strapped to a chair on the side of a volcano for 30 years with a widescreen HD showing him his children's lives tearing each other apart, and and the terrible things that happen to them, and only showing the terrible things, not showing any of the good things. But does Morgoth really have that power to curse his family? Not really. He's got Glaurung out there doing it for him. Mm-hmm. And some of it was Turin's own doing, because Turin was
reacting to everything. He had
a little bit of Beowulf in him, but without that, the father figure that he needed, because his dad is strapped to a volcano. Sid, go ahead.
Yep.
All of this makes me think this informs the scene at the end of The Lord of the Rings with the mouth of Sauron, a new figure showing up, who was so much trying to be so much like Glaurung.
Yeah.
And failing utterly, and I would say because Sauron did not have the power of Morgoth. He had some of it, but nowhere near enough so that he couldn't create a bewitching evil the way Morgoth could. And I had never seen that parallel before.
And Aragorn didn't need to say, you lie. He just stared at him. And then this guy cowered and withered yeah.
Well, he had Glaurung was obviously a product of Morgoth. That's very true. It's interesting that he was mortal because he was a Habsies. He was like Luthien. Luthien was an elf, even though she was half Maya. She's never counted as one of the Ainur because the Ainur can't create of their own another Ainur. So she is elf by default, and Glaurung is mortal by default. But he's got some serious evil embedded in the cookie, for sure. And he's able to do this. But what's interesting, to leave this topic alone at this point, is that he's able to cloud and corrupt her mind, but doesn't actually have the power over the substances of her mind. He's not wiping her brain out physically. He's just destroying her ability to recall things. And she doesn't actually lose her personhood totally, which is this recurring theme in Tolkien. You cannot mess with the music of the Ainur, the way that Eru has it intended. Morgoth and his creations are corrupters and deceivers. That's all they are. And in the end, they don't have the power to undo the fabric and the rules of the world. And so it was a really interesting...
And the freedom of each soul to resist.
Yep.
And to resist, yeah. And you know what? It might have been her resistance, like her father, Huron,
Yeah.
that gave her that spark of, well, no matter what you do to me, I'm defiant. And so he cast this spell on her of cloudiness and haze and everything, but it doesn't.
And
it doesn't permeate.
And you like Nienor as a character so much, which was what makes the ending of the book so horrible, because it doesn't end well for any of the children of Huron. You know, I mean, look what if you guys ever want to read Tolkien's darkest, sickest, most effed up tale, this is the one. I mean, there's a part where orcs nail a lady to a tree. I mean, it's pretty messed up stuff, but it's so good.
The Children of Huron. Yeah. The Children of Huron is a great book. I agree with John. And for those of you who want to just find the section of that in the Silmarillion, this is the chapter
of Turin Turambar.
Yeah. It is definitely downtown dark.
The Silmarillion only tells a small bit of the Children of Huron. The rest of it was published in Unfinished Tales, but you can get the whole thing as one novel here. Highly recommend you get this. It's so good. But
Okay. So, well, all right, we nailed it.
And while I'm on recommending, also get this. Get The Fall of Numenor. It's also so good.
Oh yeah, I read that. I've read that many times, and I have that in hard copy. I love it.
That's one of my favorite hardcovers because of the great artwork in it and all the great little illuminations and everything.
Do either one of you have any copy of the Fall of Gondolin yet?
I have that. Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, the hard copy.
Yeah. Here it is. Oh no, that's Beren and Luthien. They're out of order. Here it is. There's the Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, love it.
This also has my favorite story that he wrote, which is the final version of the Fall of Gondolin. Unfortunately, he didn't finish it. It's unfinished, but it's so engrossing that you get to that point and it's like it ends and you're like, oh, I want more of that,
Yeah.
All of those books, the great tales are worth it,
Well, we're right on schedule, John. What's the next topic for us right now?
We're done today.
Right.
But all three of us went. But I wanted to ask you a question, actually. Matt, I wanted to run this one by you because I know you're the Bombadil expert here. And somebody brought up something. Actually, it might be somebody that was in the chat. And speak up if it was you, because somebody asked me about were there any scrapped Valar. And I said, well, yes, there are. And this was actually what inspired me to do my topic for today, because one of them was Luthien. A different Luthien, a man, or I should say a male Vala. And then I was like, okay, how many Luthiens are there really? But anyway, we were talking about all the scrapped Valar, and when you go through all of them, a lot of them are like, okay, I can understand why that was Walter. Okay, you could understand why he cut this one out or why he cut that one out. There was a really great character that was Tulkas' sister. They cut her out mostly because, there were two of them. They were twins and they were attached at the hip, and they basically folded his character into Tulkas, but then they didn't want to give Tulkas a sister that he was always attached to, so she gets cut out. But there's one Vala from the Book of Lost Tales. I'm not going to... The book is way too big for me to grab right now. But Omar. And this is the one that I really wished that he had kept, because Omar is this wonderful, wonderful character. He is the Vala of music and language, and I'm like, why wouldn't Tolkien keep the god of music and language in his legendarium? Why would he cut that guy out? And
he already had Mandos, but go ahead.
Mandos is nothing to do with music.
Well, no, but his wife is.
Tapestries. That's different.
Well,
I'm talking,
stories.
yeah, but I mean, he was a harpist and a singer, and my theory was that he was Omar a little bit too cheerful because he was starting to take the Valar in a different direction, and the word Vala means power, but back in the Book of Lost Tales, it actually meant the blessed and the happy. So he was taking them in a darker direction, so I think that's why he cut Omar out. But somebody in the comments on Quora said, well, maybe those traits were given to Tom Bombadil.
Or maybe they were reserved.
Is that the
for
nature of the
Eru.
question from the comments, Tom?
Well, it was just a thought that somebody had that maybe some of Omar's traits wound up in Bombadil.
I do have an answer
about
for that,
the singing and the cheerfulness and also the power.
Yeah. Well, I have an answer, but I'll wait for Sid.
I'm going to suggest he was split in two directions. Mm-hmm. Some of it was reserved back to Eru as the conductor and creator of the score.
Ainu Lindala,
of the Ainu Lindale. And some of it descended down to a more human, natural level in Bombadil.
I like that idea, yeah.
Also, I think Omar is the only... I think of Omar as a real human name, and I don't think any of the other Valar had names that you would find...
Yeah, I mean, he had, like, the accent over the O, but other than that, yeah, it really is just the name Omar, you know?
Well, so the answer to this question from the comments, I think, centers on one main concept idea, which is whatever happiness they put into a role, I agree, it would have been Tom, because...
Oh, wait a minute. Tom. That's a biblical name, isn't it?
I don't think so. I'll check.
Thomas. The doubter.
Oh, okay. No, I was thinking...
I found one.
Except Tom Bombadil is the opposite of the doubter.
Yeah, but I found one, though.
Yeah. Okay, so look, there are several several letters that are key to what I'm going to say here. They are letters 133, 144. I'm sorry, 131, 140, 152, 181, 210, 204, and a few others that can easily be found on our sites and at Quora. Anyway, they get at this idea that there's one of these letters that talks about Tom Bombadil being the metaphysical manifestation of wood, water, and hill. He doesn't say it that way. He's the manifestation of the natural sciences, zoology, and biology. End quote. Yeah. And so what's happening here is that if you look at the Valaquenta and the early part of Silmarillion and do a survey of what the Vala are assigned to and what they do, their job description of how they made things, and Tom being the master of wood, water, and hill in conjunction with the metaphysical presence on the earth of the zoology, biology, and the natural sciences. I mean, those are big statements. That's exactly what it says right from Tolkien's mouth. Then you've got this and these other passages I'm not even going to talk about, but you've got this this person, this entity, who is covering basically about half the footprint of the Valar. If you take a look at what he's assigned by those 4 or 5 titles right there, and you look at what the job descriptions are of the Vala, he's about half of what the Vala are. So I think there's evidence that says that he abandoned those ideas because there was the Tom thing going.
Yeah, I think
he decided to make that some kind of a repository of a lot of this stuff and a lot of power going on. There was so-called on the more creative, happier, indestructible side of what was going on, and fleshing all that out.
I think you're both. I'll go to you in a second, Sid. I think you're both right, and Laurel just pointed out Omar itself is a biblical name as well. That the music thing, the harpistry and everything, had to go back to Eru. But I do think that, the cheerfulness and the singing and just his overall personality became, imprinted upon Tom because, I think he liked the character. I think anybody who reads Book of Lost Tales is going to like Omar as a character and wonder, well, why didn't he make it into the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings? And then you say, well, maybe he could. And this person in Quora, I forget their name, but they said, hey, maybe he did. Maybe Tom is a little bit of Omar there in terms of just the personality, not the abilities or anything, but just the way that he carries himself and the constant singing and the cheerfulness and everything, but also that there's a quiet power underneath it all, so I think that, and then, John Tolkien takes Michael Tolkien's doll and tries to flush it down the toilet, and he's like, aha! Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah.
In the case of Tom Bombadil, is not a biblical name. I just checked this. Tom, as in Tom Fool, Tom Boy, simply means man in Middle English. So I'm going to suggest that the name Tom, and of course Tom Fool goes so well with the poor doll who got flushed down the toilet, and many of and everybody trying to trap Tom Bombadil, and he gets out.
It's also where the term tomcat came from. Man, tomcat.
Man-cat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you, Sid, just because we never hear him referred to as Thomas. It's always Tom or Old Tom.
But also, it was Tom existed as a name in English before it became a shortening of Thomas.
Yeah.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I think it's also true. What Laurel is correct that Omar is a biblical name. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, like he said, he did put the accent. He did put the accent over the O. I mean, he could have renamed him, but he did put the accent over the O. So he did change. Maybe he was like, we'll put that little dash there. Even though we already do. We don't say Omar. We say Omar.
Yeah. I want to name one obvious fact that John referred to many, many times, but for those who are new to all of this, in the early years, the Valar did have children and families.
Oh yeah, I mean we talked about Luthien being.
Yeah, I'm saying, but that was changed.
Yeah.
The Valar ended up having some of them had spouses, always heterosexual, but there were no children, brothers, sisters. He changed all that before the books were published.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Melian is the only time we hear of a Maiar being married. There's a lot of assumptions made about Ianwa and Elmare, or about Ulmo and Ewinen. I think Ulmo and Ewinen were almost certainly married. It's just never said outright. But I think that's just because the elves, as they admit in the Valaquenta, they just don't know much about the Maiar. They're so hidden from them. Mm-hmm. But Walter, we're not going to talk about the Blue Wizards today, but maybe next month I might prepare something about them. If you're really interested to hear about the Blue Wizards, we could maybe take a dive into that next time. But anyway, guys, do we have anything else that we want to go over real quick before we stop?
No, I have to leave very directly.
Okay.
No, I think we're good. It was a good show. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful to have you all.
So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, and I'm going to go over all the schedule stuff, and then we're going to do a raid on Twitch. If you're watching on Twitch, we're going to raid somebody. If you're watching on YouTube, the stream will end, and I thank everybody that came by and everybody that's in chat, from the people who are experts down to the people who are newbies and just getting into this stuff. We welcome you all, and we think you're all really great. So for the YouTube people, next week on Thursday the 18th, I will be streaming the Fellowship of the Ring video game. We left off, we were about maybe halfway through Moria, so we've still got a ways to go on that. On the 2nd, 3 weeks from today, the 2nd, we will be back here with Matt and Sid on the Council of Tolkien. And then on the 9th of October, I will be reading The Two Towers. Of course, if anything needs to change, I'll talk about it on Discord. I'll talk about it on the community tab. I will let you guys know. But that, as of now, is the YouTube schedule. For Twitch, you guys know that I do gaming streams every day, and that tomorrow we'll actually be finishing up Final Fantasy IV, the After Years. Saturday night, we'll be playing more of Xenoblade 2, and Sunday night more of Mega Man X5 and so on. Of course, the full schedule's on the Discord and everything. So anyway, let me just find somebody to raid for the Twitch chatters. YouTube chatters, I love you guys. Thank you for coming by. Consider joining the channel as a member. It helps me out. If you're watching and you're not subscribed, consider that as well. That also helps me out. And oh yeah, Mega Man X5 is a blast. We'll be finishing the X playthrough and starting the 0 playthrough. Let me just find a nice place to send the Twitch folk. I wish Corey Olsen was online. He's never online on Thursdays, unfortunately. It would be nice to raid another Tolkien channel, but he's only around on like Wednesdays, it seems. I think we're gonna raid. Let's see. I'm thinking we're gonna raid Dan. Now, actually, I'm gonna raid Frogs. We're gonna raid Frogs. He's in a chatting stream right now. We're gonna raid a guy, really cool dude named Frogs Cure Cancer. He's in a chatting stream right now. He's a really great guy. We're gonna send you guys over there. I'm going to put a Children of Húrin related raid message there for you guys to copy and paste. Okay, guys. All right, guys, there is the raid call. Copy that, paste it as we head into Frog's Cure Cancer stream. It looks like he's watching some cartoons with his chat. And we'll see you guys over there. We'll see you guys on Discord. We'll see you guys tomorrow on Twitch, next week on YouTube. And away we go.